the actual account of Monte Esports just replied to him like, shit happens, like crying, laughing emoji or something mad. Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter. I'll make this one really quick so we can get straight into the meat of it because we've got Heart out here. Normally, we all enjoy Hawka's insights into CS. He's been on this show many, many times. But I'll tell you right now, the main reason he's on this show is because he was willing to get up before 11 a.m. to start recording it because actually we're doing these events while Maui's at the event. So there's only two options. You either do it really early or you do it really late. And by the way, either way, you could end up with a fried Mauisnake. A new delicacy on the menu, apparently. That's why this is one area I'm really fair in. If there's ever an episode where Maui's getting a bit tetchy, I just remind people he is doing this after X amount of sleep, after whatever amount of he has done some right after he did like 6-hour core stream or something, so it's all good. Anyway, normally we actually at the moment have had a pretty good streak of the guests coming with it. I'm actually going to lead with the first topic on this one because I've got to say this is one of those like oh, I'm getting news over the wires here. This breaking story. Like the obvious thing we're going to start with is the ugly section, and in the ugly section we're just going to say not even actually what happened with Monte, the team from the major that you all remember that had that run with the players with Gizmy and Azuwu and BMAS and Afro and all those guys, and then you remember they looked like they were even going to like do a deep run in the playoffs. But it was obviously 9Z was more the up-and-coming team that had the big run there. And then right afterwards, there was the whole story where all the squad except Gizmy got sold to Luminosity, and then because Luminosity had locks, and then everyone was like, lol, what are you doing? Gizmy was the real prize. And then Gizmy went 100 Thieves, and then sort of mixed results so far, but people are interested in that project, right? It's not even any of that. Like, we don't mean if you're someone who's been under a rock for the last 2 days, or the fact that, you know, Monte doesn't have their players anymore. If you even look who they've just announced as their roster, by the way, it's like team kicked. Like, it's crazy work, like the team. It's like all the people, you know, that get kicked out of teams, they're just all in this squad now. And that seems to be the only coherent thing. It's all like they met in a bar, like, yeah, you team was too. Yeah, you. Like, all right, fuck. You want to play the CS? Like, there's not even any roster construction, right? Even though they're not bad names. But also, it's not even the fact that, like, they did the whole thing with, like, they didn't let Gizmy go first. The real thing we're picking, this is why it's ugly, it's the social media of Monte and how they've handled this issue. Because what's bizarre is, I actually think if they hadn't have basically tweeted about any of this topic or replied to it for the last 2 days, actually, that is the only thing people would think about Monte. They know Monte's not a giant org. I believe it was even started by, like, wasn't it actually started by some guy young in war or whatever? And it was a bunch of people in the Ukrainian scene who started a team a few years back. And if you remember, original team was all Ukrainian. There was a whole bunch of elements to it that were quite interesting, right? Obviously, if you look at them, they've sort of outperformed themselves as an org, haven't they? They're not an org that has like big money on, big salaries. That's why you've seen a lot of players move on from there and go to other teams, etc. I would say if anyone knows, you can put them in a similar vein as other teams from their region, be it in a circle where, you know, sometimes you have some good players, but also you expect once a player moves on, he moves on to bigger things. What's bizarre is they've basically done a thing where on Twitter, I can tell you, because you can imagine if anyone has a spicy social media manager, I'm going to be aware of it, aren't I? Because all they do is immediately try and bait my account and say some rude shit to me. So I don't even need to, like, the modern dramas to know that someone's happened. But essentially, the gist of it is this. When now it's been announced that BMAS is actually benched from Luminosity. So remember, he's long gone now from Monte. That was like a while ago at the major. Even though he's not in Monte, basically, when it's announced that he's benched, they've come in, the account of Monte itself, not even like the manager himself, or the actual account of Monte Esports just replied to him like, shit happens, like crying, laughing emoji or something mad. So essentially, they've sort of like mocked their own ex-player that just left. And the reason that's bizarre is, despite what's come out since, obviously they did originally do the classic thing where you just like, I love you, see ya, oh shit, we had such great times together. You know, we just the standard social media fare where you pretend everything's great and you all love that the guy's leaving your team and basically go to a better team, etc. So they've baited him like that, and in doing so, right, what I love is, fair play, BMAS. One, I do see why you actually have had some trouble getting teams, but two, a man after my own heart. Did he just decide to respond, you know, video equally a minor bit. No, he did what I did, which is like, right, turn all the keys, fire the nuclear weapons, the whole silo comes out, fire. Like, bro, this is crazy work. Like, in this particular case, BMAS has basically just replied that, like, he's owed money and, like, all this stuff, all these problems. And then also there's a thing that's mad, which is right around the time of this, makes me wonder if there's a connection. Monte themselves have put out a video on their YouTube channel, which admittedly is not in a language I speak. So I'm going off, like, things I heard translated and things people have said, etc. And basically, in this video, the owner, as far as I can tell, CEO or whoever, has basically sort of like trash talked all these players and given all mad angles. Like, I think he called BMAS a rat, and then he suggested that, like, I mean, as far as I can tell, I think the only one he didn't totally trash was maybe Gizme. I think it's maybe even implied they got like the most buyout for him or something like that. I don't know. But some of the other players, they basically suggested that something like that they already knew before the major happened that they were going to join other teams, or maybe they'd even already signed contracts to do so, you know. And so there's something a bit scuffed there, which, by the way, that's also why I think this topic should be ugly, not bad, because to be fair, some of that might actually be mildly shady on the players' side. And in this video, whoever this authority figure is also sort of tries to say like their agents have done some shit. By the way, I could totally believe that. I can tell you, agents do just care about their bottom line and their clients, sometimes to the detriment of teams and where the destination the guy goes to, depending on if they have a signing bonus or not. Jazz. So it's not even like they're bringing up some totally unwarranted area that has no, culpability for the players or interesting elements of the scene. But the key point is this: the ugly part is just that they've not only failed to understand that, like, Barbara Streisand effect, which, if you don't know, is the concept that back in the day, Barbara Streisand had a bunch, I think it was something like she had like a house that she lived in or something. She didn't want people to know where she was. It was sort of some like early paparazzi type action. And the premise goes, I think she then, I think it was like, then her agent or something tried to sue the people who took the photos. And the joke is, what does that make you want to do if I say to you, oh, this big celebrity doesn't want you to see these photos? It makes you go, can I see the photos, please? And so the famous concept of the Streisand effect is when you try to like suppress things like that, it actually makes other people rush to go like, hey, what's that thing they're trying to suppress? And they want to see it more. So you actually have the inverse effect. It's counterintuitive. You actually blow it up even bigger. And that is what has happened, because in having this tiny little tweet where they just went like, shit happens, which has then gone into the BMAS thing, which has then gone into this video, has then gone into, and now Azuu's come out and said he's owed money for a bunch of things. And then other people, I think Afro came out and said something as well. So all these, what's basically done is set off a chain reaction where seemingly all the former pros, not all of them yet, I don't think, are coming out and sort of saying even more so. And it's shone way more attention on it. And actually, to bring it all the way back to the beginning, to end this point, the worst thing of it all is, I actually don't think most people really know exactly who's to blame, what happened, what was fair, what wasn't the... All we know is they've just been so rude with their social media that, like, everyone in the scene's just like, you know what, fuck Monte Esports. Like, that just seems to be like what the general gist at the end of it all. So Hawka, what, obviously this is still an emerging story, as they say in the media. What do you think of this whole drama, this whole affair? What are your thoughts on it?
I just love that you started the podcast with like, oh yeah, we love Hawka's insights. We love that. Okay. How am I meant to get into this guy's brain? I don't like being in this guy's brain. What the hell is he doing? Because like the crazy thing is, right, normally with this sort of situation, it's like a random social media like intern and the tweet gets deleted. Yes. I can't remember the exact tweets. This guy is like tweeted shit like this all the time. Like they just tweet mental stuff from their account and they never take it down.
It's so, like they don't know that normally social media managers, some of them are bad at this, but they're supposed to be sort of being cheeky, but they're just actually offensive. They're just sort of like, you're fat and your mum's ugly. Like, what? Like, that's not a joke. Like, nanny. Like, okay, keep going.
It's insane. And the other part that kind of sucks about it is like, for whatever reason, compared to a lot of other orgs that are, you would say, more established, Monte actually seemed to always get like pretty good players. Like they actually seem to do a pretty good job of finding,
it's always names,
new players. Yeah. So unfortunately, it just seems like, they're just not well run for whatever reason. I think like pretty much all the other players have come out and said like we're owed prize money and everything seems to be going wrong with it. So yeah, I don't really know what to say about it other than it's just wild that this can still happen. But like,
by the way, I am going off memory here at 10 in the morning, but there's also a thing I believe where it was like when one of them said he was owed the money, I can't remember if this was BMAS or Zuwu, they said on Telegram, like, he's a bullshitter, or so it's bullshit. But then they themselves were like, it was only 2 weeks that we owed you. It's like, which is it? What? Like, that, but again, by the way, luckily this is never going to court, I don't think. If this was going to court, I don't know if you know this, but actually one of the problems normally with players speaking out when they're owed money is they say, there's no point saying anything publicly. I've got to do a legal case about this. So it's better to sort of keep it. My lawyer just says basically keep everything in house and you have to wait till the case results. I'll even say, if this ever would go to court, I actually think these tweets would probably be used against Monte, believe it or not. This would be the sort of thing you'd be like, social media exhibit A, Your Honour, you know, like, I'm only good off watching Suits or whatever, but you know, I imagine something like that would happen in court.
Yeah, but overall, like, I don't think there's too much else to say other than, I guess I'm glad that it's come out now, because hopefully, like, it helps the players get paid. I don't know, but yeah, it's just wild that this can still happen. But you know, it's esports, so it's always going to happen, I guess.
So I would just say that Monte, which was an org to me, I didn't really know what was behind the scenes. I didn't really see anything from their founder in the past, but this was an org that, you know, they really waved the Ukrainian flag. It felt like they stood for something in that sense. Yeah. They had brought up a lot of players over the years who now are, well, not staples in the scene necessarily, but players who have caught our attention that otherwise may not have been given opportunities. That aspect, all of that goodwill is completely just down the toilet. They just flushed it all away. The words that the founder said about his ex-players, like Afro and Bemis, calling him a rat, like making fun of Azuwu for crying about the contract that he had with Luminosity. First of all, I don't even know how he's supposed to know that. Like, was he in the room with Azuwu when Azuwu signed another deal, which was set up by his agent? Like, I actually just don't even understand how he's privy to these details. And I think he also called Azuwu ugly too. It's like, that's just like, what even?
Also,
what
spoilers.
Even
look at this video,
you know?
Mate. Fucking pot calling the kettle black. Look at that fucking video, mate. What a specimen this guy is. Bloody hell. No one's making you in a fucking custom create a character game in a fucking, unless it's wrestling or something. Anyway, keep going.
You know, I mean, it looks like, I mean, his face looks like the avatar of that guy that shit talked Shocks and was called an incel. Okay. If people know what I'm even talking about. Okay. That's one for people that are on Twitter too much. But this was just such an awful look, and I don't know where it all came from. This sort of this hostility for his own players, because they also, for the thumbnail of the literal video, they put 3 of their players in rat suits walking towards a mouse trap with the Luminosity logo on it, as if they're gonna die for something. But it's like Luminosity did have a little bit of drama last year with their Smash players, where it's like they didn't get paid in the last couple months, but then the company got acquired, and I think the acquisition actually led to the debts and all of that having to get paid out by the company that then acquired. It was like Vertical Studios. They acquired them, and so I think a lot of that's been sorted. I hope. I mean, I don't think that they have new issues after being acquired by a bigger company, but it's generally speaking, there's been a lot of goodwill towards Luminosity. What was it, like? Ninja was sponsored by them for a very long time. When he was kind of in the prime of his streaming days. You know, they're a reputable org in that sense, with the exception of the lack of, or the late payments for Smash players that they had. So I mean, if you're, I would say this: it's a much safer ship to jump on than whatever the hell was going on with Monte. And I would just say I'm all for the player empowerment that Bemis angle that he went for by just even calling this kind of stuff out. You know, you run a huge risk here, but at least it holds people accountable that otherwise may just get away scot-free. Because there was also rumblings about Monte picking up a new team. I forgot all the names that were floated, but it was like SDY or Aurora or something like that.
A whole bunch of people,
something like that. And I think that it the ridiculous aftermath also, which I have to acknowledge, is Nexus tweet on Cypher. Just like that is crazy.
So first of all, here's the actual like apparent lineup that they're gonna have. It's probably they've seen the practice room. It's SDY, someone called Stormak, who's also Ukrainian. Okay. It's Bro, the Danish player who was actually more recently benched from some other squad. I forget even. Man2. This is why I say it's like Team Kicked. Man2's 4G, and then Cypher from the UK. So it's basically like Team Kicked. And then also, let me look up that exact. I believe the phrase in Nexa used. By the way, also, where the fuck's Nexa been? He's just been like AWOL.
He's just been chilling and then he just sends off.
This just made Nexa pop up from the fucking BMAS sign in the sky, because this is the tweet in Straight Fire. He says, "My boy Cypher must have been Hitler or something in his past life. At this point, the negative karma is just unreal." Just like, fucking hell.
Why did he have to go there?
I did Nexa, yeah, but I thought normally you associate Nexa with like spicy tweeting. Well, that's kind of fire. Holy shit! And he tagged him too. He's just joining the team now.
Also, I love that Nexa still has the BC Game affiliation on Twitter. Like, I had no idea he was even related to that team still.
True. He hasn't taken down the social media banner, if you don't know, guys. It's me there, yeah, whatever. Oh, fucking hell, what a world. I'll also say as well, I actually think I was quite fair by saying that, look, I can tell you behind the scenes, yeah, this is what pisses you off if you're an org, by the way, because I'll give you the other side of it, which is this. It is true. Like, I wouldn't know who the fuck Azuwu is if he hadn't just been on Monte and had this run at the major. I wouldn't know who some of those, like, pretty sweet people like Afro, it would be like this roster. I'd be like, he's still playing. If I used to say this was team kicked, it was BMAS, fucking Afro, like, Gizmy guy's the one who didn't make it in some of the team. Like, what are we doing? Like, so what's funny is, I get it that if you're an org like that, where you feel like I was the platform or the boost step up, as it were, to let you be more famous, they then feel like, you know, at a minimum, don't do things like, you know, allegedly sign a contract with someone else before you finish playing with me. Don't do it before you've finished at the major. Because, by the way, that sort of implies to me, not that they would have, but even if they'd won the major, they still have left because they want bigger salaries or bigger contracts or whatever else. So, like, I get that part. I can certainly understand why internally that would be fucked up. I'll even give you the Azuwu angle. Right, here's how they could have known that he cried or whatever, Monty. If it's indeed true, apparently the Luminosity account said this is bullshit, or the owner of CEO of Luminosity or whatever. But I'll just say this, that sounds to me like some stories I heard out the Brazilian scene, where sometimes when players had privately had the convo with another team, like, yeah, I'll try and fuck those guys. Then when they had to like go and talk to the owner of their org, because in their scene, they also can be quite, let's just say, like, to be kind, you'd say protective. I'd say sort of like a bit like I own you sort of mentality. I can just say sometimes when those org owners have like called them up on an actual phone call and sort of given them the sort of like, hey, you're fucking me over, man. What happened to all those good times or whatever? Sometimes I've heard players have broken down crying because in that moment, like, you don't expect to be confronted like that. And also you might just be some young kid who did come up in the team. And if someone plays the emotional card, yeah, I can see that you might even be possible you would feel like, oh, I've betrayed you and I've left. And also, let's be real, it looks like this fucking team lays it on thick. So I don't even think that's totally implausible. But I will just say, I don't know if this is some translation, cultural error or something. Bro, I don't think this has made everyone against Monte, though. Like, isn't everyone's whole thing just like, fuck Monte? And also, we haven't looked into it yet. This is still an emerging story. We don't really know, like, how bad in general it is. Because here's the thing, like I said earlier, they were claiming, like, there's no unpaid ones. Then they were like, and is it that big a deal? And besides, it's only 2 weeks. All I'll tell you is this. I did a little bit of digging. I've heard some of them haven't been paid for stuff last year. And then also, didn't Rainwaker or something come out who was in the team before and also just be like, oh, I'm owed money to or whatever. Again, that might have just been the few weeks again or whatever of the major. And also, by the way, you never also technically know when the tournament pays the money. Sometimes that could be late as well. But I'll just say, if it's true that I heard that someone was owed from last year, well, that wouldn't be a tournament issue as far as I know. In theory, some of that might just be like you were too slow on the org side to send it, or let's be real, sometimes if you're a small org, you have your own expenses and you already spent it. Essentially, you have to wait for the next payment from some other thing to pay for that thing, and then you're doing a sort of triage with your players because you're in multiple games or whatever. I don't know in that situation. So that's why I think it was fair to just put it in ugly. And also, I actually would encourage you, one, I imagine this will come out eventually as like a bigger story if there's more going on with Monte. Think about the last episode. In fact, I would say go back and watch the last episode of Snake and Banter. It now seems eerily prescient. Because if you remember, Note's main point was that there was all these problems with orgs. He listed, I can't even fucking remember because it's 11 in the morning. He listed 2 orgs and then said there was a third one. You can look at which the orgs were. These were orgs that had problems paying. And then he said something like there's an unnamed third one. And the gag is, I'll update you all and gives us a fun angle for you. I then messaged him a few days later and was like, oh, wait a minute, is that third team this one? Because I'm hearing some news about this team. And it's like, no. And then this happened with Monte. It's like, wait, was it this one? No. It's like, fucking hell. How many teams? So all I'll say is this: there's a bunch of teams out there. I think it's actually connected to that issue, guys, of like the major didn't pay very much sticker money, and all these orgs thought they were going to get like $300,000, and then some of them got like $40,000. I think that means a lot of these like smaller orgs that had rosters that are better than the org, as it were, as in the level of the org. By the way, I always make this point about Mongols. If you actually know how much Mongols players got paid, even just from my guesswork, I think it's incredibly low compared to any team that could ever win a tournament. So what you got to realize is some of those orgs will actually have been banking on the idea that we're going to get 300k now, and then we're going to pay some of the people off. So when all of a sudden you get 30k or something like that, you're not going to have any fucking money to pay someone all the prize money and the salary and all the things you thought that the major had made, even though you had this great result at the major. So that part I also think is like tricky, but again, I don't think anyone's in disagreement. The social media is just ass, though. It's just it's a bad look for everyone. Like you're also not even doing what you hope you're doing, which is you're almost trying to be like the Conor McGregor of social media for teams, but you're not coming off as like lovable or cool. Everyone just actually thinks you could. I mean, I'll just say this. This is one of the reasons why on that episode I did say you should be really careful as pros. Like, don't go to a different org because like you saw them do well in a tournament or they're offering you €100 extra. Go to the orgs that look like they're safe, like they run well, no one's going to be rude to you, people are going to be professional, because this is one of those moments you wish you'd never taken it. Because all I'll say is like the vibe that you're getting from this team is like fucking that you've got some like fucking pimp just backhanding you, like, get over here, like, you're fucking mad, besides you're ugly, no one could love you except me. Like, this is some fucking straight emotional manipulation. By the way, this is where I almost wish esports was mainstream, because TikTok would fucking destroy you, Monte. There'd be women, there'd be wine moms just fucking going crazy. This is like my ex-husband, he also made fun of my looks when I got my new husband. Oh, I wish women's TikTok could get all in Monte's ass. One of the only times I've ever wanted women's TikTok to exist with white crunchy moms and white. Yeah, whatever. It's all good.
Crazy.
It's all good. Okay, let's move on. So, what we're going to do is, because in this episode we've got a time, we're doing a little trimmed down episode. So, Hawka, what is your ugly point?
Yeah, my ugly point is that kassad is no longer on. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure all the comments.
That would be fire. I can't lie. I can't lie. That would be fire. The best one would be if he was like, "What, you can't," and the ugly thing, we don't even know the reasons why. So, Thorin, why did it happen like that?
Okay. By the way, the cultural impact of that show, the amount of posts, like I'm seeing threads everywhere, like fair play. No, my actual ugly is Aurora.
And people do say Hawka, even though this is mental because it makes no sense. They go free kassad. It's like he left. Well, how am I supposed to do? By the way, by your logic, you mean don't free. You mean imprison kassad. You mean kassad goes, I want to leave, and you go, you can't. You're actually in my content gulag, and you have to fucking do the event. I know, what are you talking about? Anyway, whatever. It's all good. It's all good.
My actual ugly is Aurora struggling to close games. And I put this in ugly, not bad. Because like I actually think their results are fine. And if anything, you're almost like impressed. Like, for example, they played Furia really close. And on paper, you look at that. For a new core, a new in-game leader, you think, yeah, that's actually really good. I mean, they lost against Focus at Blast Bounty. No one cares about that. They played an online qualifier for Star Series. They made it there. Then at Esports World Cup, yeah, they played Furia really close. It's just the way the losses are happening means that there can now be the narrative around this team when you have kassad, who was on Falcons and was struggling to close games and had some silly round losses. You have Atantalas, who's kind of known as like a tilter or a choker by some people. And in that series, you obviously have the Mirage, where they were 9-3 up on CT side, and then they didn't get a single T round against Furia to close. By the way, also, poor Yimfat tries to have Aura for once in his life and does the little wave. And apparently all these former Mouse players, they all have to have one moment where they try and be cool, and then it gets slapped in their face. I don't know why God hates these guys, but okay, fair enough. But they obviously had that. Then they have the in that series also, they had Ancient, where they got 8 T rounds on Ancient on their pick. They also lost that 13-11. Then now against G2, recently, they had that Anubis, where again, they had a 12-7 lead on their map pick. They go on to lose it 16-12. In theory, these like could be like nice signs, but like it could so quickly become that the narrative around this team just becomes, oh, they're nearly there, but they're not quite making it. By the way, also, in that series against Furia, Yimfat was 9-30 on T side, bro. Like, I'm a little worried about Yimfat and how his role works on this team with kassad, because I don't know if kassand's always this like super sacrificial in-game leader. And I wanted Yimfat to get back to being that like really overqualified support player who gets his, but I don't know how that actually works with kassad, because I think kassad kind of wants to be a bit of a fragger himself. Like sometimes on Falcons, weirdly, that would happen. So you don't have this super sacrificial IGL either. So it's this weird position where on paper, I look at the results for Aurora and I'm like, this is fine, actually. You're competitive against Furia. You're competitive against G2. That in theory should be good. Just the way it's happening, it worries you because I don't want this team to go down that spiraling path where suddenly it gets in their heads and it becomes a thing for them, right? That's the concern I have right now.
The Anubis game that they just lost to G2 is the one that's freshest in my mind, given it just happened here at the group stage of Porto. And the way that G2 came back, I mean, that G2 they got gifted some rounds. They definitely took some rounds. I like some of the aspects of G2, which we'll actually touch on later. But for Aurora, on the other hand, they had multiple man-up situations too, and they just simply couldn't coordinate across the map. And I feel like the whole idea of this team coming together, even though it was 3 guys from a Turkish team, but Woxic and Atantalas had obviously spoken English on previous rosters before, Wycadia hadn't. I think that's a little bit more difficult to overcome than some people probably had figured at the beginning. They thought, oh, it's fine. You know, we've heard Wycadia. Like, people were actually writing this before on comments. The things I was saying was that, oh, it's fine. Wycadia has spoken English in interviews. I'm like, that is not the same. That is not the same at all, as people are realizing on BC Game right now, probably that coming together and everybody trying to speak English is just more difficult than people give it credit for. Because even though if you all shoot the opponents at like a really high level, you'll have a high enough floor that you can usually get past the bad teams. But once you play a similarly skilled team, it does need to be teamwork, and that's what this team just doesn't have right now. Watching them get opening kills versus G2, and then you'll see a pincer on a bomb site when they were on T side Anubis, by the way, and they were up something like 12-7, and I think the first round that they were up 12-7, they got a couple kills, and then they're going through mid, and this just looks like it's going to be a perfect B crunch, like guys flanking from mid, guys going from B main, but then suddenly the guys from mid just take the fight way earlier than the B main guys take the fight. And then it's just 2 incredibly just separate fights that go on for G2, and they just thinking to themselves, thank goodness they didn't come at the same time. And that happened in other rounds too, where they just were not on the same page. And then I also think that Kixan, who to me actually was a pretty decent mid-round caller at times on Falcons. Sure, maybe in the super high-pressure games, some people don't remember those moments fondly for them and him, but I would say if it was a group stage game and there was low pressure, they were actually pretty good at maneuvering themselves in a 4 versus 4, whereas now I almost feel like they're just getting just kind of pieces that are a little sticky on the map, that they're not helping out, that whether that's like Wycadia or Yimpad actually on one side of the map, as they're trying to do something, then the guys that are in the space-taking effort, like Kixan and Xantaras, it's just like everybody's on a different page. I don't think anybody understands or is looking at the radar close enough right now, other than maybe Kixan to say, wait a second, guys, now's our timing on this side of the map. We need to be joining up because they're putting pressure here. Everybody's just in... It's like they're just trying to survive. Like everybody's just trying to survive their fights, and with no real understanding of how do I connect with what's going on elsewhere.
No, I'm with you. Luckily, I'll tell you a piece of good news, though. That's also one of the hallmark classic problems of the old Aurora, is closing out fucking games. Like, they were the team that would either beat you on a map 13-6, look awesome, or win on Anubis, or they'd just lose like 11-13, 14-16, 15, all those OT scores and all those super close ones. Like, that was one of the reasons I think actually people were critical of Madra as well. And obviously, as pointed out, anytime it was the playoffs, it usually was Antares. It was fucking bad, wasn't it? Right? The main problem I have with this squad is, like, obviously, I can forgive that when it's like teething problems, when you've just made not only roster moves as in new players, but you've also brought in a new coach, you switched to English, you changed the calling to English, and as pointed out, this was already something actually you could say Kixan team, but I even think in Heroic this themselves had a hard time closing games out. They were pretty good, but they didn't always win the matches. So I do think there's some obvious issues here. Like, that's why I actually think it's a fair ugly point rather than bad. Like, it is more like it's just an ugly start, because you do hope also when you make a squad. I think anytime you go international and add big names, you just hope it pops off immediately, don't you? And it like works kind of a little bit like, on some degree, like when Carrigan joined Falcons. You want to have like some of the potential seen early. Whereas right now, I actually think this was one of the teams where, remember, they also lost in the bounty. People do just look at it and they're like, oh, what the hell? I thought this team won the roster mania, but actually it's kind of a bit meh. And also it's quite similar results to the old Aurora, whereas you also want to immediately look like you're way better than the old Aurora, right? There's a few angles on this people might not know. First, if you look up the stats of the new roster, the most alarming thing is the Wikedi angle, because he went from their best player, eye test wise, stats wise, to he's actually a complete like underwhelming player. Like I've even got the stats for you right now, which is at the moment, right? Yimpat is doing really well. He's a 1.11 rating player. Xantares is 1.13. He's playing like a star like he'd want. Woxic himself's been a 1.07 player. And because Kicksan actually always was a pretty decent fragger, he's a 0.98 player, but as the IGL, Wikedi himself is 1.05 player. So it means if actually Wikedi was somehow at the swap to English numbers, this team would have all the potential everyone hoped for. Like that team would probably be like, a semi-finalist in big tournaments. Also, as you pointed out, they barely lost any land matches. If people don't know, they lost the fucking game to Fury in the playoffs at EWC. That was like a 3-mapper that could have been 2 maps to the side of Aurora. Like, if you look at that, also, that bracket, you'd have had a chance to, admittedly, you just lost to G2. You would have played them in the semis, but in the quarters, rather, you'd have had a chance in that bracket to make a deep run. So, I've got to say, I still have some hopes for this team. I actually do think you can still get it all together. Obviously, since you started like this, if anything, Ash will get more credit if it all comes together now, because he's obviously the new coach, isn't he? Which is also another change they've made. So, I don't know what to make, actually, because I do think it is a problem. I'm with you, and it has looked a bit ugly. Like the problem, one thing I hate in general is doing that thing. Because spoiler, let's just say we might talk about players later, like NIP. I hate watching those teams like NIP where it's like they almost won a map. Oh, they were close, and it was also you got to get the win eventually. Like those only matter. You can do like individual cases, like they could have won that series. If you keep saying that over and over again, actually, eventually the pattern becomes you consistently don't win series that are close. Though, like I agree that becomes clearly an ugly, if not bad, point about your team. So I think that's quite fair. Yeah, there you go. Move on. Obviously, you haven't got that much of a sample size yet, right? Did you know, surely you do by now, LFN Premium is live. You can subscribe at lastvination.com. Costs $9 a month, but you can also get the whole year for $90 and has a 7-day money-back guarantee. One perk of it, we're about to do it right now, is you could have your name mentioned and your topic brought up on Snake and Banter. So you can just insert yourself into the show. See, rather than wanting Kassad to be on the show. By the way, I also noticed, shout out all those plastic fans, all the people in the comments of the last Snake and Banter. Where is Kassad? Where's the Serbian? He was never on the show, you fucking cretin. You obviously don't even watch Counter-Strike. Like, you're actually just a fraud hopping on the latest social media trend. And your version, I was making fun of wine mums, your version of a social media trend is pretending to be a fan of an old Serbian player from iNation on shows he wasn't on. Like, I don't know, mate, maybe you should get another hobby. You know what I mean? I know CS isn't that great right now. You get loaded up into all those Mirage Premier games. But you know what? Even so, I know they never run in on T-side, just sitting in the B apartments. But isn't that still better than just pretending to watch a show you didn't watch? Anyway, point is, now you could, that's where that was part of the premium ad, whatever. The point is, if you want to yourself make these shows better rather than complain about other people not being on them, why not be on the show yourself by being a premium member? And in this case, you can suggest a topic. We're also later on going to do like an exclusive Q&A for behind the paywall. So we need questions and topics if you subscribe. Go to the Discord. There's the channels for each of these. Put the show, because there's loads of shows, remember. Remember, you get all these shows ad-free if you're a premium member, by the way. And as part of it, you have to put what show you're on, because obviously I have counterpoints and I have all the other ones. And as I pointed out, I'm also ruthless. Like, I want the fucking money. So I will also, if you just don't put a show name, I'll take that if there's like no questions for counterpoints that episode. I'll bring that as a question. I'll start making money that way. Exactly. I'm hustling, homie. So this particular topic is by Mark. And it's actually an interesting one. It's more of like a bit of it's related to esports, but you'll see it's not like a classic gameplay question. He says, why is there so little merch at esports events? You go to a football game or pretty much any sport, and it's easy to spend hundreds of pounds on merch. But you go to a blast, and the only t-shirts on sale are blast shirts. Where are the Spirit, FaZe, Vitality jerseys? Same thing happens in LOL. So it seems to be an esports predicament. How do you make it easier for fans to spend money in esports? Okay, what do you think, Hawk? What do you think the issue is in this sense?
Yeah, I'm trying to think at the events I've been to. I feel like sometimes there are team shirts, but maybe
right, so if you go to ESL, I believe they even set up a shop at theirs, but I think they also have like a deal with the teams for merchandise. But I don't know if it's true about Blast, but I don't think Blast had a shop. I'm not certain on that one. Maybe they just sold t-shirts like this guy said.
Fair enough. Yeah, I do think in general, like I know recently ESL, for example, like they have been pushing their own like shirts and stuff, and some of them actually kind of look pretty cool. I think it's tough when it just feels like a lot of the esports teams. I don't think there's much imagination often with what they're doing with their jerseys, so it kind of feels a bit like, what's the point in like buying this specific jersey? If anything, the ones you remember which are iconic are the ones that you would like want to have. And I still remember. Do you remember when Liquid had the Marvel collab?
Yeah,
like,
that was
cool.
Sick.
Like people would 100% buy stuff like that.
Yep.
And even like mouse mats and stuff, like 100%. So yeah, I think there's more that could be done. I think people wouldn't mind spending it. I don't know how it works in terms of figuring out with the TO though. I guess that's the part that he's kind of talking about, where he doesn't feel like they're there on site. To be honest with you, I probably don't have the expertise in this to really give a good answer. Okay. I don't know if Maui has a better idea than I do.
Well, like you said, ESL has had shops on site before, which usually get swarmed pretty early on. I can't speak on behalf of every single Blast event because I'm not really keeping track of these sorts of things, but I do remember at the Blast Austin Major that every jersey had sold out except for Wildcard. Like every single team's jerseys were just completely sold out because Americans just wanted to buy them.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean that's just what I remember. That's literally what I remember. I mean, I remember that, and I mean, actually, it might have been a literal fan told me that. It's like, oh, I went to the shop and I wanted to get something. But then the only thing left was Wildcard, and I don't want to buy a Wildcard jersey. And I'm like, all right, that's fair. I was like, that's completely fair. Okay, but I don't know which events this guy's talking about, obviously, because I mean, if you're at the Blast Bounty, it's a pretty bare bones studio environment, and so they're not setting up merch booths or anything like that. I also have to probably assume that because these esports orgs and everything don't know how much they're going to actually sell if they have merch, they'd rather just say, let's not take the risk on bringing 1,000 shirts and only selling 20 of them and having to go home, because they probably have poor metrics themselves for understanding what sort of pull they have.
I would just say this, like, first of all, there's a very obvious reason that I can tell you without even knowing the specific case of these TOs, which is you just make very little money off merchandise in esports, believe it or not. Like, people don't get this because they try to run the maths. One thing that's really sad about consumers in general, it's actually how they get tricked by political stories all the time, is they don't know what the margins of different businesses are, as in they don't know what profit amount you make based on the amount that it costs to make and ship and sell the thing and staff this. Like, I'll give you a really weird example. Maybe Hawka knows this. In the UK, they endlessly bait the idea that like supermarkets are all greedy and milk it. I don't know if you know this. You can look this up online. I believe supermarkets run at a profit margin of 1 to 3%. Now that is crazy. That also means, by the way, just as a random political aside, if you ever see people steal from shops or whatever, that is literally going to affect the price of the items in that shop if you know what that margin makes, because you're making very little. The whole point is supermarkets, is why I'm bringing up the point, are businesses of scale. The reason why they can work on 1 to 3% is if you're in the UK, for example, we have like 3 to 4 monolithic supermarkets that are just in every single town in the whole country, and they must just be selling so much stuff that 1 to 3% it works out in the long run, and it's just able to run as a business. So the problem in esports, I was told, is even when you have a popular team and you have like either a good jersey or you make like a cool t-shirt, even if you were to sell like literally 20,000 units of that. By the way, 20,000 units is no small amount in esports. Like, there's not as many people as you think buy these things. You don't make very much money off that. That actually would only be like, I think like a few $1,000s in profit or whatever. Like, so you don't make massive amounts. Also, you can imagine, I doubt esports gets the best actual split with companies who make t-shirts and things like that, because we're also not giant. We're not Real Madrid or something, are we? When people know that in sports you sell them, I don't think they appreciate that in the modern day. This is also why TV is massive. In the modern day, the reason why like Manchester United is giant is not actually about like the city of Manchester or even fucking people in the UK. It's the idea that some little kid in India buys a fucking Manchester United jersey. Some guy in Brazil buys it. Some guy in Japan becomes a fan of football and buys a Manchester. We're not on that level in esports. We get the odd person who does, but we don't have the scale of that. Then also, I'll just point this detail out as well, which is, as Maui just essentially suggested there, another thing people don't understand about like economies and businesses is we all take it for granted that when you have a shop in your town, it's roughly the same size as the shop in every other town and it has all the same items and it's stocked in the same way, because presumably when it's in a town, they only open there because they already have done like, you know, the sort of like community testing and numbers to know that it can fund that. Think about this for a second, guys. Unless it's a major or like a giant, ESL, IEM Krakow, IEM Cologne, that's not a major, where they guaranteed to get a certain amount of foot traffic. There's blast events that have like 1,000 people in the crowd. If you have 1,000 people in the crowd, you're not going to bring massive amounts of merch. You're going to bring like a few hundred of each type, And also, when you look at the numbers quite cynically at that level, I mean, that's, like I was saying, that's not the major. Like, I also think it's different when people are doing that one big trip to the major or Krakow or something. They might then buy like 3 items. If you're just going to random tier 1 circuit event, but there's like 4 events more before the major, maybe that's the one where people just buy a drink and just sit down and watch the event. So unfortunately, essentially, one of the answers that's boring is it's just actually how like economics works at the moment in esports, and that's just not sexy. But I actually agree with the point you guys were making about they also don't do the best job like actually eliciting us wanting to buy things, because at the moment all they mainly do have is just the jersey of the team. And I think it's been pointed out by many people, because actually there's one area I'll give credit to Spirit, because everyone now plays in these AC cooled environments where actually nowadays you need hand warmers. Spirit just said fuck it, they're on some like 1920s baseball shit where you have like a cotton t-shirt, because they've realized actually you don't need the classic phase-esque like football shirt with all the, because if you don't know, that's the type way, even though the material's a bit dodgy, it's got holes in it so that like the sweat comes through and you don't overheat, because that's supposed to be so in case you play like an American football game in fucking Miami, or you're playing in like the south of Spain in football like 7 p.m. on a roasting hot summer night. Like, so you don't really need that in esports anyway. And I'll just say a lot of those jerseys just look kind of meh, don't they? And I will say one thing I would encourage teams to do is this. I'm actually always shocked that they don't do more of this, but I also know orgs aren't idiots. I imagine they just don't make as much as we think they would. If I was teams, one of the things I would be all over is being as fast as possible to get an artist and a concept together for any meme to do with a player or one of your teams. I'll give you a random example. If I was Falcons, I would already have some sort of a jersey that was like Carrigan Weewoo or something like that. I feel like surely if someone's going to buy that, here's another one that seems obvious. If you're Team Spirit, how have you not got a t-shirt that's like the jab itch for best coach or something? Some joke, even though these might just seem like Reddit memes, I could be wrong, but I feel like that's also the sort of thing like you want to buy if you're a fan and you're at the events. Like, you already saw people actually, even though I believe they weren't made by Spirit, people did buy loads of the jab bitch fucking frogs. There was some like Chinese guy who immediately, the hustle is crazy, innit? He immediately had like a shop up and you could see it on like, I don't know, TikTok or Weibo or something, him like sewing them all together after that first match. And I tell you what, by the time they got to the playoffs, every fucker in the crowd seemingly had one of those jab itches. So I think that there's definitely a lot more could be done. I think it's, by the way, this is why I thought was a good topic and why I put it in ugly, because I don't think that what the person's saying is invalid. I think actually he's being a consumer and being like, please take my money, fry from Future Armor meme. But I think also, as pointed out, one, it is somewhat mysterious how merch works, and two, there's some actual real world reasons, as usual, that aren't sexy, that unfortunately explain why this is the case. I will just say, to bring it all the way back, I don't even fucking work with ESL. If you do go to a big ESL event, they are the ones that have done the best job, probably in the past from their Louvre agreement, etc., where they do tend to have a shop that has all the tier 1 teams and all their merch there. And actually, some of them, I don't know in the modern day, but some of them actually do way more than you think. Some aren't just the jersey. I can tell you back in the day, like Mouse, for example, used to have some pretty cool, like, streetwear stuff and stuff that actually you could have worn outside of an esports event even. Okay, we will now move on to the good section. So, Hawka, what is good right now?
Yeah, I feel like Counter-Strike, it's a game of, I feel like we're all kind of haters. We all like pain. So my good point is still to do with kind of bad stuff, but it's just funny. It's the Luminosity are being punished for picking up the Monte core.
Oh, I see. I wondered when he wrote that down. Right, I get it. So you actually, the point is you don't want people to do stuff like this. So you want them to put, okay, I think what a mad handle for good that is. Okay,
this is the laziest GMing of all time. They literally saw like, oh, this team did a good run at the major, let me just pick up the core without thinking about anything. Like, if you follow Counter-Strike and you look at this team, you are literally looking at it and you're like, oh, Rainwaker, the guy that couldn't make it on Liquid. Oh, Afro, that guy. Oh, he's sick, bro. Azuwu, he actually had a pretty good major, but he's not been that good before that, okay? It's also funny timing for this, because obviously, look, I'll put it in good also because I'm happy that these guys are probably actually getting paid now. That's nice for them. Hopefully Luminosity will be paying them. But they've literally already made a roster move after they played like 4 matches or something. Like, they've already got rid of BMAS for Youngster. So overall, I just think that like this just feels like a classic scenario where it does just sort of feel like you've gone for the laziest possible option of GMing. You've not really looked any further into it because you know, whatever you think about Monte, I remember watching this team at the major and thinking to myself, like, I don't know how this team is this good. I don't know what is happening. And then eventually I put the pieces together. It kind of just has to be like Gizmy must be doing something pretty good, right? I think we all kind of got to the same conclusion. I think pretty much everyone in the community kind of agreed that like Gizmy's clearly doing a good job, and that's most of what this team is. And they literally haven't won a match since they've come in. They've only played like 5, but still, it just feels to me like this is the most obvious scenario where it's like, maybe you can pick up a couple of these players, but they picked up the whole 4-man core. I don't think they needed to do that. I think they could have like got a player from somewhere else or found something else. Because the other part of this is, I don't know, is Dendele like a real org for those Sharks guys? I don't know what that is, but like, I don't know what that scenario is, but I'm sure that like that's like an up and coming South American team that I actually think has some promise, has some good players on it. And yeah, I mean, Dendele, to me, it doesn't sound like an org. I don't know. I guess I could look it up. But yeah, overall, it's just that this seems to me like you could have done something better here. I feel like you could have done something better. And maybe they're just getting their foot in with the core and they're slowly going to make the team better. I don't know. But to me, it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like they literally just looked at a major and they were like, oh, cool. This we'll just pick up this core. And yeah, I don't think it's going to work out for him.
Dendele has some like Brazilian soccer association. Okay. They're like if you look up like Dendele FC, they have I don't know what they do. I think it's more like on the FIFA side or like the FIFA game more than actually real. I don't know how much real soccer they did, but they had a brand because they happened at the Blast Bounty event is when the name swap happened, and so I looked them up a little bit more back then. But it was it's like influencers that put together. It's kind of like Foot, I think, where it's just like a Brazilian, like how Foot is sort of like a FIFA related organization or something along those lines. It's just something that we're not really in tune with at all. But it does seem like they have backing, like they made it pretty clear that they acquired Sharks in some aspect, and then they just got to have this team. But I was actually going to go with something kind of similar to that with Luminosity, where to what I would assume is that by picking up Lux, you also probably thought you were going to be able to get some sort of Brazilian core, because to the best of my knowledge, I didn't think Lux spoke English at all. Like, I don't know where that even came from, that he would be the head of an international English-speaking roster. And I have to completely assume that that is also what's doing them in, because I actually didn't think Lux was bad when he was on Legacy. I'll say it makes sense that you would go for Art instead of Lux when they were having a bit of trouble. But for Luminosity, it's a team that all of their history in Counter-Strike has been with a Brazilian core, even down to the very last time we even saw anything with that team. Well, actually, that's not true. The very, very beginning of them was a North American team, because it had Flom on it, and some other people like that.
I think they even had Devilwalk or something. There was one point where they had like a bunch of weird players, wasn't there?
I just remember the North American squad that had Flom and Anger, and then I remember it just becoming the Brazilian guys. But maybe in the midst of it,
it was in 2015 or so.
And so for them to pick up a core like this just doesn't really seem to fit the brand whatsoever. But picking up Lux, because the guy did admit, they picked up Lux. They wanted to get. Maybe they might have considered acquiring all of Monte, but then you're right. It is just a slap. You just slap together. We picked up IGL that has been to tier 1.5 LAN grand finals, and we picked up a core of European guys. And it just took it didn't really leave a lot to imagination for how he came to that conclusion that this would work. He just literally looked at their Liquipedia results and then just said, these are two good placings between these groups of people. Let's just see if they fit together. There was no keen eye that was actually going to discern whether or not this would work, whether the roles fit, whether there would be a language barrier, culture clashes, or anything like that. He just put A and B together, and it actually made total dog shit. So you're not really, you're not off on that. I just think that this guy probably bit off more than he could chew and really expected that he was going to get a very different type of lineup.
I would just say my joke would be, I obviously know who's GMing. They've obviously drafted in that wild card ChatGPT fucking rapper, haven't they? So obviously they've just got, because this actually looks, I agree, like you've done either like computer, tell me some players I could sign after the major. And then it's told you, like, Monte is an up-and-coming core. You could buy them for the following reasons. Azubu was a young player who was emotional and was not afraid to show his tears, you know. You could do a whole thing like that. BMAS, a rat, like, whatever. You could do a whole thing with that fucking all out there, couldn't you? And also, the joke is, if you had a noob who didn't know CS, you would look at the HLTV ratings and go, Gizmy, he's not even fucking good. And then not know that he was the IGL, and then that's how CS works. Because here's my point here. I'm going to do one of my classics. I'm going to rerun. This can be remixed a million times. The reason this is bad GMing is you failed to understand the engine of that team of cast-offs was like it's on some fucking raggy doll shit. It actually is supposed to be Gizmy, you idiot. He's the one who was making it all work. So what you've done essentially is like sign the classic FaZe clan without Carrigan. It's like he's the pipe that makes all the others work. This is like you've signed the Beatles and the only one you excluded was Paul McCartney, who wrote loads of the songs and was the fucking like emotional leader. This is like you've signed Limp Bizkit and you didn't get Wes Borland, who does all those amazing riffs, etc. This is like you've signed BTS and you haven't even signed Jungkook. I had to look that one up. I won't even lie. I looked that one up because I wanted to be down with the kids. I realised I was going Beatles. Nah, a little bit too back in the past. All right, Thorin, get in with the kids and the music. Limp Bizkit. Shit, that's also my era. Right. All right, BTS. And I just Googled who's the most popular member. Anyway, the point is, I just did an example myself there of both what not to do. And I did something a bit like what I think Luminosity did. Because I'm with you guys. Here's the part that makes no sense at all. Not only was Gizmy the part making if anything, the reason people rate Gizmy like Maui is because he didn't have any fucking pieces. He had what looks like cast-off players that should, yes, as we see, be on a Monte type team, like not on a fucking top team. So if he's then getting good performances and results against real teams with them, we go, wow, imagine if this guy had a real set of players. Apparently Luminosity went, imagine if the guy doing all that was the only one we didn't sign and we just signed all the fucking random pieces. Then they got the Puppet and they were like, go then, Puppet, talk. He's like, go on then. Why isn't he talk? What the fuck? I went to a ventriloquist. This puppet was talking. It was drinking water and everything. It had a fucking Cockney accent. It's not even doing anything. Just sat there. What's it doing? But he doing nothing. Just crying. Fucking hell. So I don't get it, mate. Like you totally missed the boat on that one. Doesn't make any sense. Again, by this way, in that team, the number one player you'd sign is Gizmy. The number two is maybe like Rainwick. He had good stats or whatever. But even then, as pointed out, look at all the teams he's failed on. If anything, we don't yet know if all these players require the Gizmy whispering in their ear to make them work. So I don't know. And also, let's be real. The reason you failed with this move is the story goes that you'd already signed Locks because he'd be removed from Legacy, right? And he's obviously like a guy who's got history with you, right? Here's what I don't get. Then you're not the team that wants to sign these players, as you guys have pointed out. He's not like an English caller. He doesn't have a history of working with international rosters. This is a weird bunch of people anyway, and we don't know if he's the right even type of IGL. If anything, as you guys pointed out, Hawka made a very good point. You're probably in the market for Brazilian players. Why not go out there and sign up-and-coming Brazilian players, put them around Lux, who you presume you think is good. That way you activate whatever skills he's got. It's also what he did with Legacy, getting them up the rankings, and then go with that. It's other teams out there that already had the IGL that should be signing these fucking players. Like that way it might work. So it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm with you. I think it's just bad GMing. It doesn't make any sense. And going forwards, let's just be real. Aside from this drama with Monte, I don't think anyone gives a fuck about that team, mate. I know they haven't actually played much yet, but I don't imagine we're ever going to see them even at the level Monte was at. And Monte themselves were a shock just at the major. So I'm sorry, I actually think this won't even be relevant in a little while. It'll just be sadly remembered as every time Gizmy does something, you'll go, lol, remember when Luminosity signed all those players without Gizmy? And it'll just be you'll be like a footnote joke in history, won't you? Okay, we will now move on. And we are going to do... Let me just think. Okay, that was we did the fan topic. We did good. Okay, it's Maui's good point. What is your good point?
Yeah. I could do my good point here. I was gonna just talk about a team that's doing well, but then I figured this is the perfect guest to have on as I glaze G2's newest opper. Okay. The biggest defender of their old opper in Hawka. Hawka has been humbled that now Wrinkle is humbling Hawka because he is taking over. Okay, watching Wrinkle right now, with the exception of the Furious series where everybody on G2 just got completely stomped. This guy he's cooking and he's cracked. Okay, he's actually making such a huge difference on their CT sides because I'll look at and I think of Sun Pius. in 2022, when he first was on Movistar, when he made a huge imprint in the scene at that Cologne event where Movistar made it to what? They beat, I think it was in the quarterfinals, I think it was FaZe or something, and they got to the semis there. No, maybe not FaZe, but it was another good team that they took a bite out of, really. And he was great. He was active, he was vocal, he was calling his own shots, he was just going for these crazy peaks. You did not get that Sun Pius in 2026. Okay, you had Sun Pius that was trying to make sure that the team doesn't fall apart, that probably himself is not thinking as much about his individual level. This happens to a lot of veteran players where they probably get a little too obsessed with the macro of the game instead of focusing on what matters most, hitting shots. And Wrinkle hits shots. Like, he is creating so many different opportunities. The reason that Aurora choked away that Anubis game that they were up 12-7 was because Wrinkle also was taking over. The FAMAS ace that he had in that one, like a hero FAMAS that he aced Aurora with, is crazy. Then he also just started looking for a ridiculous amount of picks with the AWP. He was pushing A main on Anubis. He was fighting mid, E-box, defending B by himself. Like, he was doing so many different things to just make sure that basically G2 could just rest assured, I'm going to lock some shit down this round. And he was getting so much impact in that. And that's just something that I feel like G2's been missing, because before last season, I was getting so frustrated with this team watching NertZ just grief up because he's just like decided that I'm going to be the opening pick this round and there's no support for it, that he's just kind of wandering around by himself going somewhere. Wrinkle has given G2 so much direction on their CT side now, and that is so abundantly apparent with especially the most recent match that they played against Aurora, that I do think that this move still may not have been the absolute best change you could have made if you were G2. Maybe you would want to change out one or two riflers, get someone that's a little bit more fitting for the role than what Mattis is doing. Like, for example, I think if during the offseason they were able to land Yimpat instead of Aurora for Mattis, that would have been a slam dunk. I think that would have been such a baller move for them. But this was an alternative option, and I feel like I'm going to just go off and praise Saw's pragmatism, because this was not on anybody's radar. I even thought it was kind of more of a lateral move in a sense, but the potential was there, and that's why we kept our eyes peeled for it. And I feel like it's already unveiling itself. Already in one of Wrinkle's first 20 maps with G2, he's put up against Aurora on their pick of Anubis, which that core was one of the best Anubis teams in the world. He put up a 1.86 rating, 32 kills in a single overtime. By the way, Sun Pius, he only had versus top 10 teams, he never had a 1.86. Never even got to a 1.86 rating on land. The highest rating he ever had was a 13-5 stomp over Furia, where he had a 1.82. So Wrinkle's already shown a higher ceiling versus top 10 teams than Sun Pius ever showed in 75 maps land top 10 filter. So that's already a huge sign that this team can improve, that the ceiling is raised. And I also just think, first of all, his rifling is so much better than Sun Pius's. Yeah. That's another aspect that I was picking up on when I was researching to make a YouTube video myself on Wrinkle, just to see, and I was kind of appalled by how bad Sun Pius's actual AK Galil stats were, and the fact that his Tech 9 literally had a higher ADR than those weapons, which is crazy. That's just a crazy thing to even learning that almost makes me feel bad that I found it and then presented that information to everybody, because then you just you're like, ooh, it's really not going well for Sun Pius there, who otherwise with the AWP in his hand, I'll still say I think Sun Pius could improve a couple teams. I actually think that Sun Pius could probably be on a top 15 roster in the world, maybe easily. I
just like the idea of Maui's looking it up. So imagine all scenes in like a 90s thriller where, they're hunting through archives and fucking, microdot of the newspaper, and he finds it and he goes, oh, it makes me feel bad. Opens up his notepad. Stats for Snake and Banter, and he just writes it all down and just on a talk show.
I have to tell everybody.
Yeah, you feel really bad about it.
I feel bad, but I gotta tell everybody about it. Okay, yeah. Such is this job. Okay,
I can't wait to tell Hawka this publicly.
Brings me no joy to inform the general public that his Tech 9 was better than his AK. And that's kind of more or less it. I really am high on where Wrinkle is headed on this G2. I don't know if they're going to capture a trophy. Spirit and Falcons are still ferocious teams, but I will be much more interested in how they get there to wherever they place in these tournaments.
Okay, if people don't know, Hawka is definitely in the Sun Pius cult. He is fully paid up.
He was the biggest defender.
I'm the leader.
What do you think about
He's
this
the leader
information? Of it. What do you think about Maui coming straight at your boy?
I meant to include this in my ugly as part of my ugly when talking about Aurora, that I can't even continue shamelessly peddling my Sunpire's narrative anymore because of these fuckers. This is personal for me, Aurora. God damn it. You made Wrinkle have a good game. I'm pissed. No, look, he had a good game. I'll give him
I've just realised you have done the thing that every analyst does where it's like, cause the point if they'd have won would have been good. Like, you know, you should have done that. You would have, good would be, this is teach G2, you should keep some bias. But because they lost, you were like, right, ugly. Aurora can't close bloody games out. Like, I love how incredibly, like, just self-indulgent that is. Go, keep going. Cook, let's go.
No, yeah, so when they made the move, I was against it. But the upside angles that you were saying, the rifling, and also the aggressive nature that he brings, like, if that worked, you could see why they would make this move, right? You could see that, like, having a more aggressive, active AWPer could be very valuable. We're kind of getting a bit of a renaissance in, like, that style of AWPing, actually. There's a few new AWPers that are finding success with that. Look, you yourself did say, Maui, that Aurora was struggling to coordinate some of these pushes sometimes. I think that helped Wrinkle, okay? I think that helped him a bit. But overall, look, it is positive signs that he started well. All I'll say is, okay, you've never been in a honeymoon period before, Maui. You've never been in a honeymoon period before. We got to wait and see on this one, okay? Because I have seen Wrinkle. Now, maybe it was the NIP factor, but I have seen him, like, when games have got close in the past, he really struggled. In this one, he stepped up, okay? I will give him that. I wonder, I'm curious long term to see how that goes, but you are right. Like, overall, he had a really good game here. You got to give him credit. He's been pretty good in general since he's joined G2. And I also, after hearing sort of from Saw a bit and hearing what they were saying, I do kind of understand what he was talking about when he was saying there's kind of just too many voices on this team. And Wrinkle just kind of seems like the guy where instead of bringing what he wants to do as his voice, he kind of just seems like he's just going to do it sometimes. Like, he's not going to say, like, I need to be set up in this way and around. He kind of plays a bit more off instinct, which I think is actually quite valuable for this team right now. So overall, look, I'm not some, like, you know, massive. I want to see Wrinkle do well, okay? I still want to see him do well, even if personally I would like to be proven right. But right now, he's proving me wrong. I have to admit it.
Yeah, by the way, one of the weirder things about that comment from Saw is that was one of the other things as well, because obviously people do know that aside from the AWP, and it was mainly on CT side, Sunpire's had his issues on the rifles, and obviously people never thought he had the performance they wanted from the AWPer. So what's bizarre is everyone's whole defense used to be, but he's the secondary caller and the big voice. But for whatever reason, they don't want that in the team. I think the obvious reason why, if I had to speculate without asking Saw himself, is because Heavy God himself in the past has been at IGL, and he's their star player in the lurkers. You'd imagine he's probably the one they want to be more vocal when it's not Hunter doing it. I'll just say this: Saw has pitted a target on the back of Hunter though, because I'm already after this guy anyway. Because I think he's essentially sort of getting by on being like a G2 Nepo baby, that because he was really good and like 3 years ago he won the MVP for like fucking, was it kind of 8? I think it was, like, we're just acting like he then gets to be that. What's weird is they always do this thing. I never made this happen, you guys did, where because he's Nico's cousin, you actually make that sound like he's actually is Nico light. Like, he's just related to him, bro. Like, he's actually quite a different player. So just because we all want Nico to become an IGL and he was a great player, it doesn't mean Hunter can make it work too. Like, there's such a weird, that's one thing I don't get about G2 is why we're tied to this whole thing. It's also had 1 year now, by the way, guys. It's had 2 full seasons. So I personally think there's actually another move, by the way, where if you don't like the GM of G2, you put even more pressure on Hunter. So I think at the end of this season, they're going to have to make they're either going to have the results they want, in which case we'll all be wrong, or they're going to actually have to fucking move on from some big names, actually. Because another one, as pointed out, is they've signed NertZ, and NertZ hasn't really lived up to par. Like, by the way, NertZ was supposed to also get that whole, your time on Liquid doesn't get it. Actually, his time on Liquid just looks like his time on G2, mate. It's not that dissimilar, even though I can tell you he's definitely getting fucking resources in this team, because the whole point of how they moved the Matisse Malps thing around was, now Matisse is sort of like the sacrificial guy that NertZ is going to feed off and get all the big numbers. So G2 in general is a little bit of a mess. It's why, though, I actually didn't hate this move when it was done. And not only because I like Wrinkle, but I actually also liked some buyers back in the day. It's also because I actually do think, I even said this before, this isn't an on-paper upgrade. This isn't even like really a move anyone was asking for. This is a move move that reminds me of in sports where a coach or a manager, like in football, for example, just sees a player that's had trouble elsewhere, but he thinks to himself, like, actually, there's something about his game that I think would work in my team, though. And they bring them in, and you always think, why are we signing this guy? But then if it works in your team, you go, oh, fair play. The coach has the eye for it. And obviously, actually, some of the things that we see, the joke is the things you didn't like about Wrinkle and Nip. He just super fucking hyphy, goes for all the shots, thinks he's fucking Monte, but he isn't. So that's apparently what they wanted in G2. They wanted like a proactive guy. Now, I will say, if you look up his numbers, he is actually still the worst player on T-side that they've got. But he does take loads of fucking opening attempts for an AWP, actually. He looks like he's pretty, like, got high agency. And actually on CT side, he's been farming. That's why he's got all the numbers. He's had really, really good. And as pointed out earlier, this is not a minor detail. I actually think this will come back in the future. I actually suspected that the era of I just AWP isn't a thing anymore in Counter-Strike. If people don't know, this was found by King T like a year ago or something. Basically, because of how HLTV 3.0 rating or 3.1 works or whatever, actually, even the star AWPers like Monte and Ziwu do mad amounts of work on an AK too, and that's how they get their numbers up, because they actually farm with the AK and then they get some AWP kills when they need to. And you maybe on Monte emphasize it a little bit more, maybe Ziwu emphasizes it a little bit less, but actually every single good AWPer basically is doing some of his numbers with the rifle. I mean, even Shiro, by the way, has a pretty good AK. Like, even he can work with it. He doesn't have to only have an AWP. So unfortunately, the sort of JDMs of the past where it's like, I have to either have an AWP or I have a pistol and I just sort of play it back and hope you get me an AWP. I don't know that that's a thing anymore in MR12 and CS2, unfortunately. Like, I actually think in the modern day, everyone has to have some hybrid nature. I should, you know what's fucked up? So sad. I did that shit Limp Bizkit. If I'd have known, I'd have said something about Linkin Park, and then now I'd have gone, we need a hybrid theory or something. You know, I could have gone the whole thing, that whatever, we'll workshop that. It's early in the morning. We'll come back. I'll have this all edited. I'll have AI voices. They'll all give different answers, whatever. We'll change up how it works. I've actually just realized even there, what I should have done, is just a random joke for you. I should have just actually, when Kassad signed his contract, had a hidden clause in there saying that I own his likeness, and just using AI to have him. We just still could do
I don't think an AI could come up with this shit.
That's true. That's true. That's true. You know what? I take that back, Hawka. You're right. No computer could simulate, not even the madness of Kassad, the sheer outrageous audacity of the man. I know. You're right. You are right on that one.
I'll actually push back a little bit on the Hunter stuff. At the beginning, when he was calling for G2, I thought it was really simplistic, where it was just calls out of spawn, very much set pieces. That's how they more or less won Blast London, because they just caught Vitality off guard with maybe a handful of good, well-oiled set piece out of spawn calls per map that through the grand finals, which was really impressive because they could actually carry out so many execs or calls with that 5 that was relatively new and beat the world's best. And then I'll be real, kind of as after that wore off, they sort of just fell back, and I think people just started countering them. They started using good opening utility. The teams, I think they slowed down a little bit. I actually think that Hunter's gotten a little bit better at mid rounds. I've seen rounds where they're stopped in their tracks because what they were going to carry out then gets halted because of good counter utility or even a kill in the opposing direction. But then now some of those mid-round reactions on T side are a little bit better. I still would obviously rank a handful of IGLs, including Fallen, above him, like Apex and Kerrigan and stuff like that. But I think it's actually a relatively short list of guys that I definitively want as my mid-round caller over Hunter nowadays. And even with also how Navi has just been completely floundering on the T side, I don't think that the gap is between him and Alexi lately, it's a lot closer than I would even want to admit. Like the way Navi has been sputtering out on some of their T sides, the lack of adaptation, how slow they are through some of the rounds. I think Hunter is actually, for the games I've seen lately, he's actually called for good pace changes or just saying we're going to slow things down so that we can feel the rounds out. And I think that probably Heavy God definitely helps, because the way he plays on extremities probably gives him a new tool that he's learned how to work with over the year that he's been calling. So I'm actually a little bit in the anti-Hunter camp. I'm actually pro Hunter nowadays. And well, I wasn't even necessarily before.
In that case, I joined with Hawka. When Wrinkle just shits the bed completely and doesn't do anything in any of these matches, then you will be hoisted by your own petard there by siding with the wrong IGL. Okay.
Now, Mattis, we might have a conversation, but that's for another day. That's another day.
Right, we've got some poly markets, by the way. So I thought an interesting one we could do, it's a fun one, is this one, which is Will the winner of Blast Open Porto be a first-time Blast champion? By the way, at the moment, it's at 63%. I looked this up, who's won Blasts before. The reason it's at 63%, I can tell you, is because Falcons has never won one. And obviously, they're one of the favourites here. Vitality's got the standing, haven't they? Obviously, Spirits won one. They even won one like last year, obviously, a bunch of times. Mouse won the recent one. I actually just looked up of the big names. Here's the ones who haven't won. Falcons has never won. Aurora has never won. Legacy has never won. Foot has never won. And if you count them, 9Z's, then look, also all the worst teams than that. But I don't think you need to be told that Lin Vision hasn't won a Blast Open, nor do I imagine they will be winning one. If they win 2 fucking games, I'll say well done. And I wish Tyler was there. But that's just being rude. I did my own Monte thing. Oh my God, wait a minute. Am I the Monte of podcasts? Oh God, I'm having a whole identity. Oh no, wait, I'm competent at my job and know what I'm fucking talking about. Okay. And also, actually, I do make fun of people crying. Shit, that doesn't even, it works too well. Oh, you know what? We'll put that out of my mind. Right? Well, here's the question, Hawka. Will the winner of Blast Open Porto be a first-time champion?
I mean, I think for me, Falcons, I like as having a good chance of winning this, but like 63% is kind of wild. Like with the names you listed, I would go against this. Right. I look, even if I think Falcons are going to win, like I know that Falcons are prone to.
Oh, sure.
Loss.
Yes, true.
I'm not that confident.
I would make a prediction more so in line with just if you think one of those non-first-time champions are going to win, just pick them on another poly market that is going to just. No,
you would. You're saying that you would do that, Maui.
Yeah, I would do that. I was saying this is my prediction. Yeah. My prediction would do this. I would do this where I would just take Falcons instead of taking, because I don't really care about the rest of the field. I don't really care about because I don't really need to wrap in whoever, because you don't even get a couple of the underdogs. Say Na'Vi, for example, pulling off a run from the lower bracket to just bounce back in this one. That you don't even get them because they've won in the past in at least a Blast Spring Finals, if not some other things. So I lose on G2, I lose on Spirit, losing on Fury, losing on Vitality, losing on Maus. There's just too many elite teams that are in that. I would just go and find Falcons and just predict them if I really think that it's going to be anybody else.
Right, the key thing is the number. Because it's 63%, I would take no. And the reason why is, even though I read off not a bad list of names that haven't won, obviously mindly held by Falcons. As pointed out, Falcons, especially because of the carrying factor too, you never know if they're going to perform in a game. And I'll just read out the list of teams that you get if you're saying no. If you say no, if I take no now, I'm basically saying the winner will be one of the following: Vitality, Spirit, Na'Vi, Furia, Mouse, GT. That's a pretty good list of names, boys. Like, that's a better list of names than the teams that haven't won. So logically, I say no. I think 63% is too high. Okay, we will now go to the bad section. So Maui, what is your bad point? By the way, if you don't know, for this episode, because we had less time, we also skipped some of the points, but we kept all the good ones in. So Maui, what is your bad point?
Oh, my bad point is just regarding Snappi, his future. It does feel like Snappi's last days are among us as he looks to be pivoting away from, well, NIP and him have apparently had a mutual agreement that if they decide to part ways with Snappi, he's cool with stepping down, and that he's also even considered the possibility of moving into a different role within the scene. That's what it says on HLTV. That source has added that the 36-year-old is open to transitioning to a new role within the scene, and it's bad because I like Snappi, first as a player, second as a person. And if he has helped and scouted a lot of great talent over the years. It does seem though that perhaps his time as a caller in the server is coming to an end because NIP has just been so strugglesome. I didn't think that the whole Launder's take from years ago would still hold up with this iteration of NIP, that your time doesn't count, because this should be a team that should actually have been contesting for being a top 15 team, and they really have been such a far cry from that sort of area. I mean, as a core, this team has peaked at 21. That's just so far beneath anything that I had assumed for this team. I mean, and that was a Snappi, Shush, Wrinkle, Kitspersky, Heron sort of thing, and that's by HLTV's metric, not VRS. They were even higher on VRS back when they had U-Jerks. that's so concerning, because that was practically a year ago to the day. And for Snappi, I kind of have to agree with the sentiment. His fragging has gotten to a level that is I don't think we have another Falcons ready to go that Snappi could hop on, that is suddenly ready to just pop off. I don't even think that G2's Saw would welcome him to the team, because it's gotten to the point where he's molding Hunter to become a better in-game leader. Hunter is a much better fragger still to this day. So what do you even stand to gain? That maybe one T-side round per half, you're getting a slightly better call, or mid-round? I don't think that's really a trade that you're willing to take anymore in a game that is now so much more about firepower, and so much more, especially about just having a really great CT side, which Hunter obviously provides. But that's not really the point. Snappi has just he's cratered as an individual to the point where it's indefensible. So that's where we're at with him. I don't think that it would be a bad idea for NIP to move on from him, and that's actually just my hard take. I think that this has probably run its course.
Yeah, it's a shame, because it has been a roster that has so many moments. Like Thorin said earlier, it's nearly been there, but it's never really done anything. But it's like the Jay-Z line: moral victories are for minor league coaches. This is not. You haven't done anything. You haven't done anything with this roster. And like the thing is, like you said, Maui, like I look at this lineup, dude. Kaspersky, Stown on the AWP has genuinely been good, dude. Like he's actually good. Shush is always solid. From what I've seen, I don't know too much about Note. He seems fine. So you look at the roster and you are like, holy shit, this could be like a really good like upset team. This should be at that level. I wonder where they go next. I almost wonder whether like a Shush could become an IGL. I just don't know if he has the personality for it, but he's the sort of player that seems like smart enough that you'd hope maybe he could. But overall, there is at least that exciting part of this, that either NIP will go in a different direction and hopefully get better, or maybe some of these players could do something elsewhere, because there is real talent on this roster. But yeah, it is a shame. It is just bad, because Snappi was also one of the guys that like he would give really good interviews. And I think he just got like the media side of things. Like he would often like, I think he was really good at talking to the talent. I think he's really good at like understanding, trying to sort of build narratives. And he had like a very distinct style on Ents. Like that was, I had a real soft spot for that team when they were good. Like they had a very unique, fast-paced, just executes out of spawn style that I thought was really cool. And it just seems like for whatever reason that hasn't really transitioned into CS2. I feel like he's slowly sort of just become like, I don't know what he is as an IGL. He just seems like an IGL who's now not a great fragger. And the other thing Snappi used to be great at, in MR15, he would condition the opponent so well. And then at the perfect time, call like a call that would just completely throw them off. I would see him do this all the time. I actually think MR12 hurt his game quite badly, because he doesn't really have the same ability to do that. So yeah, it sucks. But I think even as someone who really likes the guy, it just feels like, bro, it's not happening for you. Like it's that time.
Okay, one of the things that I have a problem with for this one is like is the fact that like there's not even a rumor as to who replaces him. That's the only part I don't get. It's like I was going to sneeze, but it didn't happen. Much like fucking Snappy's time on NIP, you thought something big was going to happen. They were going to make a lot of noise, get in the mix there, and then all of a sudden, last second, just you left unsatisfied, like something that had to be done wasn't done. But maybe that's actually kicking Snappy, because the weird part is, who did they sign? Because actually, to me, even though I don't certainly like the results of NIP, the bizarre thing is they are one of the most bullshit teams, because I'm actually with you, mate. They are one of the teams that like you watch them in the game and they're almost good. They're almost good. I'll even tell you when I looked this up, because I don't actually follow most of the actual results of those smaller tournaments. What's mad is when they go to those small lands, they actually somewhat cook. Like if people don't know, back in March, they won one of those Roman Imperium Cups. Like, by the way, those are some of the teams that like you see at the bottom end of the real tournaments. They had, they won a stake ranked tournament in May, where they're beating people like Magic and they're beating like the FaZe before they got J-Bo and etc. They've had a bunch of tournaments like that. The most recent stake ranked, there was one in July they came third at. Even at EWC, like they're mixing up. They get 3 maps against Astralis. Like you go and look at all these tournaments as well. They nearly always have one result where they either win against someone who's decent at tier 2, tier 1.5. So they make it. And so I would say this, there's a saying we have in English, like an idiom, it's called flatter to deceive. It's the idea that like you look from what you do, it's because flatter is the idea like you're making it sound better than it is. You look like, oh, this is fucking good actually. I'm in on this. And then immediately you just get let down and it's fucking bad. Unfortunately, that has been the story the whole time. And the real issue, if you have Snappi is twofold. One, people still remember the Falcons time. And even though I will always say every time I bring up Snappi and Falcons, he was literally told he had Nico, and Nico had done everything except sign the contract. And then as G2 themselves told you, they didn't think Nico was going to be that. That's why they already kicked JKS and they were already ready to move on. I think they were already going to make like Hunter IGL or something. And so they had to like rewind all of that and then do this different move. Oh wait, Snacks was the IGL at that time, whatever. So the point is, it's a mixture of you were in a high profile team and it failed mega. Now you're on like sort of like, one where essentially this is an org where you're going to get all the credit. You're going to get the Gizmy credit if you build this squad up and take all these pieces that no one knows. So there's that part that you've underwhelmed. And then secondly, everyone knows Kaspersky just signed that long-term contract and he's really, really good. And so on a scaled down level, it's one of the reasons why people are critical of G2 because they've got Heavy God locked in. You've got your best player. They've agreed to play for you for years because these are all real orgs, remember? They're not some fucking Eastern European org that's dicking people off on Twitter and not paying them. These are real orgs that you can play for and you know this history, etc. So I think people look at that mixture, and I agree with you guys. You can go through almost all the other players. Stout was a good pickup. Here's what's funny though. I'll tie this to why I actually think for me this would be more ugly than bad. Because actually the part people don't know, sadly, is, and I only knew this myself by talking a bit behind the scenes, is apparently most of those players that did join ENCE were literally scouted by Snappi himself. He was the one who found them. In fact, one of the things he's done in CSGO and CS2 that's really good is scouting talent that became star players. He was the one who found Spinks and NertZ, and everyone can go, Andy, we was good. No one was signing these guys to top player teams and making them top talents. Now, his problem has been some of the ones he's gambled on in NIP have just been wrong. He had Wrinkle and Ken. They're two players at different positions that I was told behind the scenes. People said they had shit hot talent. They just didn't manifest online how you wanted. Kaspersky worked out. That was a good pickup. And actually, if you argue the Stown one's good, that sounds like that was a Snappi move too. So what's funny is, what's bizarre is Saw almost gets like the Snappi credit because people assume because he was the coach in it, he must have got them all. I heard it was Snappi. So I will just say, this does mean if you kick Snappi, if he doesn't stay in the org, you're not going to get a Stown type move and maybe you're not going to get the next young talent. So that's a weird one. That's why, by the way, I'll make a speculation. The reason it says he might move to a different role, it doesn't just say he'll become a coach, is the same reason why, when people say to Fallen, you should just become a coach, and he's like, I'm definitely not going to, because the whole point is I'm quitting the game to stop traveling all the fucking time and being away from my family. If I'm a coach, I'm still at the same bloody event. I'm just stood behind them instead of sat in the seat. So I suspect, even though, by the way, I actually think this guy seems like he would be an obvious shoo-in to be a coach, I actually do think the most logical thing you could do, and I'll tell you what, if you are some orgs out there, maybe G2 themselves think about this, sign this guy to be like a GM, sign him to actually pick up players and scout talent. That seems like a thing he's really good at. Roster construction, picking up talents, converting people's roles, finding what they need in the game. I believe in NertZ's position, they took him initially from a lurker like Spinks to like an aggressive player like fucking he is now when they made his whole name off. So certainly seems like a competent person. The problem just is, let's be real, they say this in sports and it's true, it's a results business. If you are in a position of authority and you are in a good org, it's still a good org no matter what people think, even if they're not good at CS, you are supposed to get results. And if you don't get the results, you have to be fired because you have to have someone who gets the results. By the way, that's why I said all that stuff about G2. The problem is you're in G2 Esports, bro. It's like the biggest org in the world. Like, you've got to have results in that. You can't just be all right if you're in that team. So it's one of those ones where, even though I agree with Maui, I like Snappi. I think he does grind. He also plays fucking loads of CS because he's in all these teams that are in tier 2, playing online and LANs and all the rest of it. But it's just one of those ones where it's like having a bad marriage. You might like both people. Maybe they should break up. Maybe it really was just bad for everyone involved and they should go their separate ways. And by the way, here's another thing I'll just say. If it's true that this means he's not going to IGL anymore, then that sounds like your heart wasn't totally in it and maybe you're at the end anyway. Because if I get kicked as an IGL and I think it was unfair, I'm going tomorrow and joining a team and getting a bunch of fucking players and saying, right, I'm going to prove that you were wrong and I'm going to build it. So if instead it's like, right, well, I quit IGL and I become a different role, it sounds like actually this was the end anyway. It's just more like, maybe they just speeded up your timeline. I think that's a totally fair point on that one. Okay, we have got one more Polymarket, gentlemen, which is this one. I actually asked, are you ready? It's funny that Fallen did this content piece where they asked him a bunch of Q&A and then they said something like, do you have a message to your haters? And they obviously meant like, people on the internet, but his joke was something like, yes, like I have a message to my hater because it's Donk and he's watching now, like hello or whatever. So shout out Fallen, you are right in some sense because essentially because everyone else glazes you so hard and loves you, I do keep a running track of every time things go wrong and bring it up. So on some level, yes, I am your hater. And you know what? as if to prove you right. I didn't do it after you said that. I had already asked, actually, Polymarket to make this market. I said, since I knew he's retiring at the end of the year, and I still think Fury is capable of potentially winning an event, I said, let's make one of those ones that says, will Fallen by the end of the year win an S-tier event? So at the moment, it is at 38%. Obviously, they're at a tournament right now. Gentlemen, will they win an event? If you were going to take a number, would you take yes or no for this? Hawka.
I feel like I'd lean towards no. I think it's possible, but like I don't think I see the highs that we were seeing when they were winning tournaments. And like they've had these good brackets, and every time they come up against like a proper team, it feels like they just lose it. So yeah, even though like the problem is that period where they were winning tournaments, like everyone remembers how exciting it was, but it's exciting because it was insanely close. It was like everything had to go right for that to happen. And as much as like Fallen can still up his game in some of these big moments, I don't know. I feel like they hit their peak, and now they're still a good team. They'll probably make semis. They'll probably make finals. I don't think they're quite there, especially with some of the other teams, and looking pretty good right now.
Something is leading me to say this, and probably just a little bit more of recency bias of them defeating Pain so easily, and also just the way that they.
Oh wow, they beat Pain.
He's talking himself into it. Let him cook. Let him cook.
They did. I guess that it's almost just that with Vitality having their troubles, and I don't know if I believe in JL Vitality. It's almost just like Porto needs to be a good event for them, because Spirit themselves they just came off of a big tournament victory. They probably are feeling pretty good about themselves. And I would say that right now, Spirit is the team to beat. And so, in a weird way for this tournament, I feel like we're due for either a Falcons or a Furia win. That's kind of how I would talk myself into this one. That I don't see Vitality winning this with JL. I definitely still would consider Spirit. If I had to just be objective, they are the favorites of this tournament, but it's not by a large margin. But I also think that Fury or Falcons are going to punch up. And so, yeah, 38% is pretty good. Let's just say that I would predict yes, because this won't be their only chance. This won't be their only chance. And I could also imagine that another Vitality. I don't know if Vitality's recovering this season. It doesn't look good for them. And there's going to be a couple tournaments, I'm sure, where Spirit don't go to it. Spirit notoriously they dodge a couple events per season. Furia can maybe snag some kind of EPL level event depending on if Spirit go to it. But obviously maybe it's not that event, but another similar one.
Okay, I'm actually going to defy convention, and I'm going to say yes, because it's 38%. That's why. Put it this way, if this was 50% or higher, I wouldn't take it, because I actually don't think they're a favourite to win any event. I think they are just a really good dark horse. But I've got to say, I actually do still think, this is why I told you, I've never understood this messaging of what's weird is, remember, it was Imperial. They said themselves, we're doing the last dance. This is the last dance. You want to sell this as we could actually win on the way out and fall. By the way, I would literally, if I was Fallen, sell it as I can win the major on my way out. Maybe that's in my last tournament and I win that major. I'm retiring anyway, because again, I've played 1 billion years and it doesn't matter how good my team is. I want to stop playing. I would just sell it as we can still win. Whereas what's bizarre is the second they announced that, it actually instead felt like it became a retirement tour, and now it's okay to not win and do badly. And I don't get that myself. Because I'm with you guys. They've been in finals. They're actually a fucking good team. I still think on paper, I don't care if there's a hot take, I think they have one of the top 3 rosters in Counter-Strike. I think that's a fucking banger set of players that all can fit their roles and can coexist and can all do. They even do it by committee. Molody isn't the 1.4 AWPer, but he's the AWPer that fucking battles the other AWPer and gets a lot of kills. K-Serato's a big fragger. Yuri's mad overqualified as a support element. Yikindar can tear up again. There's a fucking good squad, mate. So I've got to say, I'm with Maui. There's so many events that I actually think for 38%, I'll say yes. I'll say they manage it somehow. I'll say they get a nice bracket, or they have one really big game where Molody goes off. Does happen sometimes. I think they can do it. I even pointed this out earlier. They actually earlier this year could have won Rio against Vitality. In that series, they were popping with Yuri, and actually it was Molody had a really bad series. I think they would have won that one. What were you going to say, Maui?
I found 2 tournaments. Fisher Playground 3. I don't see why they're not the favorites at this event. There's no Vitality. There's no Navi. There's no Spirit. It's them versus 9Z, Legacy, G2, practically speaking.
Okay.
Foot's there also. But yeah, that's absolutely a tournament they could win. Also, IEM Beijing, There's no vitality. The best team there, I mean, there's no spirit or vitality, so you're up against really Falcons and Na'Vi and maybe 9Z and Legacy there. Foot's not even at that tournament. So there's a couple tournaments that are really prime for the taking for them.
Okay. I'm actually going to cut my point because we've got a limited amount of time for this one. So what I will say is, if you are a normal pleb peon who lives outside the castle walls of Last Free Nation, that's the end of the show for you. See you on the next one. But if you are a subscriber, you get to come in to the Red Keep and enjoy an exclusive Q&A session with me, Maui, and Hawka, where we will answer your questions. Okay, welcome. You are in the exclusive Q&A now, where we will answer your questions. And we actually need people not only to subscribe and pick Snake and Banter from the show, but also submit questions. We need you to go into the Discord and put Snake and Banter and put questions, because we've already got a few. And as I said earlier, I will cannibalize some of the other ones from like that are just generally out there, but I'm not going to like double them up on shows, for example. So